Hey guys, in this video I'll be going over the most likely top 4 at the 2024 Prague Pro. From left to right you have Sean Clarita, Martin Fitzwater, Chris Bumstead, and Matthias Hallweck. I'll mainly be focusing on Martin and Chris because I believe they are so far ahead of the competition, and I'm pretty sure that most fans care about them the most. I will give Sean props though, as he looked far better here than he did at the Olympia, and a big congratulations to Matthias, who I was unfamiliar with until now. To be honest, it does look as if Martin faded a bit in this comparison compared to Chris when it came to the posing composure and things like that. However, we will have to see that in the comparison. Now, do let me know in the comments who you have winning this competition, and like and sub if you want to see more. With that all being said though, let's break down this comparison. The first pose, the front double, is an easy win for Chris in my opinion. Immediately you can notice that Martin isn't pulling a vacuum and almost looks less composed compared to the veteran like Chris, who has controlled and flexed every single muscle in his physique, whereas Martin, kind of looks a bit sloppy. No disrespect though. While Martin is undeniably better in the arm size and quad fullness, Chris has a superior level of deep refinement in the arm and in the quad separation that really isn't visible for Martin. I know this is open bodybuilding and size reigns supreme, however Chris just looks so much more pleasing and even has better proportions than Martin. For what it's worth, Sean looks good as well, and so does Matthias. However, I really don't see either beating Chris or Martin. Matthias doesn't have that refined look yet to his physique, whereas Sean looks a little too small next to the far larger competitors. Regardless though, I still think that Chris will pull a victory here in this pose, with Martin placing second. The front lat spread is again a knockout pose for Chris. He's winning in the structure by a pretty large margin, has the best lats in the picture, and a really good flow. While his conditioning might not be as good as it was in, let's say, the 2022 Olympia or even the 2024 Olympia, he still showcases great separation in the quads, delts, and arms, and has the most pleasing shape on stage by far. Martin might not even be coming in second here, with this being one of his weaker shots in my opinion. He's showcasing the least lat exposure out of anyone and has no standout attributes upstairs. I will say that he has the fullest and most freaky quads once again, but this alone isn't enough to win the pose. I'd probably have Matthias even in second, with Martin in third and Sean in fourth. The side chest is closer than I would have thought between Chris and Martin because Martin now showcases more detail than ever in that side leg. He was known for always having a pretty massive leg in the past, but never had that Chris Bumstead level of separation. Now though, he's really got a good complete side leg when it comes to size and definition, a fuller chest, and a larger arm and delt compared to Chris. Is that really enough to beat him though? Well, in this pose, I would say that Martin does look solid, but he doesn't look phenomenal when summing up all of his parts. On the other hand, Chris does have some weaker body parts, like his arm and delt for instance. However, his chest and side leg are arguably the best on stage, and his aesthetics are just amazing. This is easily one of the best side chest poses in the history of bodybuilding, and I do see myself going with Chris here. Everyone else is kind of battling for second in my opinion, with Martin getting second, Sean getting third, and Matthias getting fourth. The rear double is a pose which I almost was certain Martin would dominate, and I think that is actually the case. Martin is easily smoking everyone on that stage when it comes to the back pop, fullness, and width, and has one of the best lower bodies in the world from behind. Just look at the disparity between him and Chris when it comes to the hamstring and outer quads. It's really showcasing the difference between open and classic. That said, Chris is known for having one of the best rear doubles in the classic physique division. However, here he doesn't really look all that competitive in the back. Sure, he's got a great pair of wide lats and a very solid all-around development. However, he lacks the depth and the thickness that Martin or even Sean has. He's getting ever so slightly outsized in the arms and delts by Martin, and also doesn't convincingly beat him anywhere apart from the structure. If anything, there is an argument for Sean beating Chris as well, as his back looks ridiculously thick and almost as wide as Martin's. Now, he's obviously not going to beat Martin as his legs and arms are so much smaller, however, the freak factor is there. The rear lat spread is the same story as the last pose, with Martin winning once again. I will say that Chris is far more competitive now because his wide lats flare out extremely well and help him compare favorably with Martin. Now, he's still losing downstairs pretty badly, however the shape and flow looks solid. Martin really is a little too much for everyone though in this pose, presenting Phil Heath-esque hamstrings and glutes and great overall development. Sean and Matthias look decent, however, they have too many flaws compared to Chris or Martin, and would be fighting for 3rd and 4th place in my opinion. The side tricep is interesting because neither Chris nor Martin are posing optimally. Chris isn't opening up to pose to the judges and the camera, and Martin really isn't controlling his midsection 100%. I really think that this is an apples versus oranges pose because Chris undeniably has the better frame and a fuller tricep, while Martin is incredibly thick and dense. I feel as though my eyes are drawn more to Chris due to his flatter midsection and very composed look, but I also can't get over his closed-off stance and kind of hunched positioning. Martin does look objectively better in the arm, delt, and upper body. However, the midsection does throw it off completely. That said, when they turn to the front, I think that Chris solidifies his win. His waist is super controlled and tight, whereas Martin's looks wider and very loose. Martin does have those nicely strided quads with tons of fullness. However, Chris also has deeply cut quads and a far better presented upper body. Do let me know though, who do you have winning here? I really can't choose, but I would probably go with Chris if I had to. The ab and thigh is a Chris Bumstead shot all day. I really don't think there's any debate to be had. Look at his small, flush, fully, controlled midsection with great abdominal separation and symmetry. It's really unbeatable. His taper might not be the best due to him not being the widest guy ever. However, those lats flare out nicely and the outer quads bow out to create a great silhouette. Normally, I would say that Martin is super underrated in this shot, and to a certain extent he still is. However, the midsection has a sort of rounded off look that I'm not 100% a fan of. Sure, his abs and serratus are great, and his waist is small relative to his frame. However, the midsection itself isn't that appealing. He does objectively have better quads than Chris, along with similar width on a smaller frame, so it might be closer than I previously thought. But that said, when Chris moves into a vacuum, it really is lights out for Martin. This was his calling card in Classic, and it really does draw your attention when he's hitting it in the open division. The flaring lats, the wide legs, and the tiny waist all create for one of the most recognizable silhouettes in modern-day bodybuilding, and I definitely think Chris would take this pose. Like all the other poses, the last pose, the most muscular, comes down to Chris and Martin for the final time. Here I would say that both look pretty good, however Martin might get the overall advantage due to his larger arms, delts, and quads. Now Chris looks good, presenting some really good separation upstairs and the freakiest traps. However, we all know that Martin brings that grainy condition and the freak factor in this shot that nobody can really match. Chris is getting out muscled in the important areas like the arms and delts, and doesn't really take up a tremendous amount of space on stage, which does detract from his wow factor. Now, I could see some leaning towards Chris for the more prominent arm, delt, and chest separation. However, as it is, I see this one as a Martin win. Anyways, that does it for this show. I'm definitely going to be sad to see Chris retire, I guess. However, you never really know because, as they say, once a bodybuilder, always a bodybuilder. Do let me know what you thought of this show, though, and do stay tuned for the final recap tomorrow, as this was only prejudging. With that said, though, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.